Most people think they already know the answer to this question, yet almost everyone carries some quiet doubt about it. How many eggs can you safely eat per day? For decades, the message was simple and frightening. Eggs raise cholesterol. Cholesterol clogs arteries, and clogged arteries lead to heart attacks. That story settled deep into public consciousness, especially for men who reached their 40s and suddenly became more aware of heart health, hormones, and long-term vitality. Even today, many men hesitate when they crack open a third egg, feeling a trace of guilt before the pan even heats up. Others feel confused after hearing claims online that eggs are either a superfood for testosterone or a hidden danger for the heart. What most men want is not another extreme opinion, but clarity. And that clarity starts with understanding how much the science has changed. Modern research has quietly overturned many of the assumptions we were taught to accept as fact. Large institutions like Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, and NIH-backed research groups have taken a fresh look at eggs and their relationship to cholesterol, heart disease, inflammation, metabolism, and hormonal balance. What they found does not match the old fear-based narrative. Eggs are among the most nutrient-dense foods available, and the relationship between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol is far more complex than we once believed. Yet despite this shift in evidence, the old fear still lingers, especially in men between 35 and 70 who are already thinking about prostate health, energy levels, and sexual performance. For many men, food is not just fuel. It is tied to confidence, identity, and the feeling of being in control of their health. When libido drops, erections soften, or energy fades, every dietary choice can feel loaded with consequence. That is why eggs often become a source of anxiety. They sit at the intersection of protein, fat, cholesterol, and hormones, all topics that have been surrounded by conflicting advice for years. Instead of adding to that confusion, it helps to slow down and look at how the body actually handles cholesterol. Your body is not passive. It is adaptive and self-regulating in ways that older guidelines failed to account for. Cholesterol regulation works much like a thermostat. When dietary cholesterol increases, the liver usually compensates by producing less of its own. This is why modern studies consistently show that for most people, eating eggs does not cause a dangerous rise in blood cholesterol. In fact, many controlled trials show that eggs tend to raise HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, while having little impact on harmful LDL levels. Even when LDL rises slightly, it is often the larger, less dangerous particles rather than the small, dense ones most strongly linked to cardiovascular disease. This distinction was missing from the original warnings that labeled eggs as dangerous. In clinical practice, this misunderstanding still causes unnecessary stress. Men often come in worried that their love of eggs is slowly damaging their arteries. Yet when their full picture is examined, their cholesterol patterns are usually driven by insulin resistance, poor sleep, low activity, chronic stress, or genetics, not by eggs. When triglycerides are high, HDL is low, blood sugar is elevated, and weight accumulates around the waist. The problem is metabolic health, not egg consumption. Eggs also behave differently in the body than processed foods. They provide complete protein, essential amino acids, B vitamins, and nutrients like choline that support brain and liver function. The body processes an egg very differently from refined carbohydrates or industrial oils. When eggs are eaten as part of a balanced meal, they often improve satiety, stabilize blood sugar, and reduce overall metabolic strain. As metabolic stress decreases, cholesterol metabolism often improves as a downstream effect. There are exceptions, and honesty matters here. A minority of people are hyperresponders whose LDL rises more noticeably with dietary cholesterol. Even in these cases, research shows that HDL often rises alongside it, and inflammatory markers usually do not worsen. These men benefit from a personalized approach rather than blanket avoidance. The larger truth remains that eggs themselves are not villains. Their impact depends on genetics, metabolic health, lifestyle, and overall dietary pattern. Understanding this sets the stage for the deeper question most men are really asking, one that goes beyond the heart and straight into hormones and vitality, which is exactly where the conversation continues next. When men ask about eggs, there is almost always another concern just beneath the surface. Do eggs help or hurt testosterone? This question matters because after the age of 35, testosterone levels begin to decline slowly and steadily. It is not dramatic at first, but over time the effects become noticeable. Morning erections feel less reliable, energy drops faster, stress hits harder, and recovery takes longer. At that stage of life, every nutrition choice starts to feel like it could either support hormones or quietly work against them. Here is where the science becomes reassuring. Eggs do not act as a magic testosterone booster, but they do provide something far more important. The raw materials your body needs to produce hormones properly. Testosterone, like all steroid hormones, is built from cholesterol. Without enough dietary cholesterol delivered in a form the body can absorb efficiently, hormone production becomes less stable. Eggs provide cholesterol in its most natural and bioavailable form, alongside protein and micronutrients that support the entire hormonal system. Multiple studies referenced by Harvard's nutrition research and NIH-supported trials show that dietary cholesterol from whole foods does not damage hormonal profiles in men. When paired with strength training, adequate sleep, and sufficient protein intake, it may actually help stabilize testosterone levels. This aligns closely with what is seen in real clinical settings. When men increase high-quality protein sources like eggs, their energy often improves first. Mood becomes steadier, workouts feel more productive, and recovery improves. These are exactly the conditions under which testosterone functions best. Eggs also supply key B vitamins, particularly B12 and riboflavin, which support mitochondrial health. Mitochondria are the energy centers inside your cells, and hormone production is deeply tied to how well those energy systems function. When mitochondria are underfueled, everything slows down, including hormone synthesis. When they are supported, hormonal signaling becomes smoother and more efficient. Another nutrient in eggs that often goes unnoticed is choline. Choline supports brain function, liver detoxification, and acetylcholine production, a neurotransmitter involved in nerve signaling, pelvic floor coordination, and sexual arousal. Many men over 40 are unknowingly choline deficient, especially if they avoid egg yolks. Restoring adequate choline intake can improve mental clarity, metabolic resilience, and neuromuscular function. That said, eggs alone do not fix hormonal decline. Nutrition is only one part of the equation. Chronic stress, poor sleep, excess visceral fat, and lack of resistance training will overpower any single food. Eggs simply support the foundation. They ensure your body has what it needs so that the rest of your healthy habits can actually work. For many men, the simplest upgrade is improving the first meal of the day. Skipping breakfast or relying on sugary options destabilizes blood sugar and cortisol. A protein-rich breakfast that includes eggs helps regulate appetite, stabilize energy, and support hormonal balance. Sometimes, rebuilding vitality does not start with a supplement or a drastic plan. It starts with one solid, nourishing meal that gives your body the signal that it is supported, not under threat. When the conversation shifts to heart health, the fear around eggs often resurfaces the strongest. For decades, public health messaging painted cholesterol as the enemy, and eggs became the symbol of that threat. But when you step back and examine modern research carefully, the story becomes far more balanced and far less alarming. Cardiovascular risk is not shaped by a single food. It is shaped by long-term patterns that include metabolism, inflammation, genetics, physical activity, sleep, and stress. Large-scale studies from Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, and NIH-backed cohorts consistently show that dietary cholesterol has a much smaller impact on blood cholesterol than once believed. This is why the dietary cholesterol limit was removed from official guidelines years ago. The science simply no longer supported the restriction. For most men, the liver adjusts its own cholesterol production when more is consumed from food, keeping levels relatively stable. Another critical detail missing from older warnings is particle size. LDL cholesterol is not one uniform substance. Small, dense LDL particles are far more likely to penetrate artery walls and contribute to plaque formation. Larger, buoyant LDL particles are considered significantly less harmful. Controlled trials show that when eggs affect LDL at all, they tend to increase the larger, less dangerous particles while also raising HDL. This shift often improves the overall lipid pattern rather than worsening it. This is why lab results need context. If LDL is elevated alongside high triglycerides, low HDL, rising blood sugar, and increased waist circumference, the issue is metabolic dysfunction, not eggs. In these cases, insulin resistance and chronic inflammation are driving cardiovascular risk. Interestingly, high-protein breakfasts that include eggs often improve insulin sensitivity and reduce blood sugar spikes, indirectly supporting better cholesterol metabolism over time. There is also the question of how eggs are consumed. Eggs eaten with vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats behave very differently in the body than eggs paired with processed meats, refined carbohydrates, and industrial cooking oils. The surrounding diet matters as much as the food itself. Blaming eggs in isolation ignores the broader dietary pattern that actually determines risk. For the smaller group of men who are hyper-responders, meaning their LDL rises more noticeably with dietary cholesterol, a personalized approach is appropriate. Even in these individuals, studies show that HDL often rises as well, and inflammatory markers usually remain stable. With increased fiber, omega-3 intake, and physical activity, eggs can often remain part of the diet without increasing cardiovascular danger. The most important takeaway is this: avoiding eggs does not guarantee heart health, and including them does not automatically threaten it. Heart disease develops from years of metabolic strain, inactivity, poor sleep, and chronic stress. When those factors are addressed, eggs can fit comfortably into a heart-supportive diet. Understanding this helps release decades of unnecessary fear and allows nutrition decisions to be guided by evidence instead of outdated assumptions. Part 3. When heart health enters the conversation, eggs often take the blame faster than any other food. For years, cholesterol was framed as the main enemy, and eggs became the face of that threat. But when you step back and examine modern research carefully, a much calmer and more accurate picture appears. Heart disease is not caused by a single ingredient. It develops through long-term patterns shaped by metabolism, inflammation, genetics, physical activity, sleep quality, and stress levels. Large-scale research from institutions like Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, and NIH-supported cohorts has consistently shown that cholesterol in food has a far smaller impact on blood cholesterol than once believed. This is why official dietary guidelines removed the old cholesterol limits years ago. The body adjusts. When more cholesterol comes in through food, the liver usually compensates by producing less. For most men, this natural regulation keeps levels within a stable range. Another crucial detail that earlier messaging ignored is cholesterol particle quality. LDL is not one uniform substance. Small, dense LDL particles are the ones most strongly linked to artery damage. Larger, buoyant LDL particles are far less likely to contribute to plaque formation. Multiple controlled trials show that eggs, when they influence cholesterol at all, tend to raise the larger LDL particles, while also increasing HDL. This combination often improves overall cardiovascular risk rather than worsening it. This is why cholesterol numbers should never be viewed in isolation. Elevated LDL, paired with high triglycerides, low HDL, elevated blood sugar, and increasing waist size, points to metabolic dysfunction, not egg consumption. In fact, studies show that protein-rich breakfasts containing eggs can improve insulin sensitivity and reduce blood sugar swings. As metabolic stress decreases, cholesterol patterns often improve naturally. Context also matters at the plate level. Eggs eaten with vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats create a very different metabolic response than eggs paired with processed meats, refined carbohydrates, and poor quality oils. The surrounding diet determines how the body responds. Eggs themselves are neutral to beneficial in a whole food pattern. For men who are hyper-responders and see a noticeable LDL rise with dietary cholesterol, personalization is key. Even in this group, HDL often rises alongside LDL, and inflammatory markers typically remain unchanged. With adequate fiber intake, regular exercise, and omega-3 fats, eggs can still fit into a heart-conscious lifestyle. As men move past their mid-30s, metabolic stability becomes one of the most important yet least discussed factors in long-term health. Blood sugar control, insulin sensitivity, and consistent energy levels influence everything from weight management to mood and sexual function. This is where eggs quietly become more than just a breakfast choice and start acting as a metabolic anchor. Research consistently shows that high-protein, nutrient-dense breakfasts lead to better appetite control and steadier energy throughout the day. Studies from major nutrition research centers have found that meals, including eggs, reduce ghrelin, the hormone that drives hunger, and increase feelings of fullness compared to carbohydrate-heavy breakfasts. The result is fewer cravings, less mindless snacking, and more stable blood sugar from morning to evening. This effect is easy to see in real life. Many men begin their day with minimal protein, relying on toast, cereal, or something sweet. Energy spikes quickly, then crashes. By mid-morning, focus fades, and by afternoon, sugar cravings take over. When eggs replace that pattern, energy smooths out. Hunger becomes predictable instead of urgent. Evening overeating often fades without deliberate restriction. Eggs are especially useful because they provide all essential amino acids in ratios ideal for muscle maintenance. Preserving muscle mass as men age is critical. Muscle tissue improves insulin sensitivity, supports healthy testosterone levels, and protects against weight gain. Protein-rich foods like eggs make it easier to maintain that protective tissue without extreme dieting. Blood sugar control is another key benefit. Controlled trials show that egg-based breakfasts reduce post-meal glucose spikes, which is especially valuable for men with early insulin resistance or prediabetes. Over time, improved glucose control lowers inflammation, stabilizes hormones, and supports better cardiovascular and sexual health. Metabolism responds best to rhythm, not restriction. Eggs help create that rhythm by providing steady fuel that supports the entire metabolic system. They do not force weight loss or energy changes, but they create the conditions under which the body can regulate itself more effectively. When metabolism feels stuck, it is often not broken, just under-supported, and simple changes at the start of the day can ripple through everything else. For many men over 40, prostate health becomes an unspoken concern that quietly influences daily food choices. Eggs often get caught in this worry, largely because of older headlines linking choline to prostate cancer. To understand whether that fear is justified, it helps to look at what the science actually says today, not what was assumed years ago. Large, modern analyses from respected research institutions have found no direct link between egg consumption and increased prostate cancer risk in healthy men. Earlier observational studies created confusion by noting that men with advanced prostate disease often consumed more choline-rich foods, but they failed to show cause and effect. In many cases, those men were already ill and changing their diets, not becoming sick because of eggs. When researchers adjusted for lifestyle, inflammation, and metabolic health, the connection disappeared. Inflammation, not individual foods, is the real driver behind most prostate discomfort. Chronic inflammation affects urinary flow, pelvic tension, and hormone balance. Eggs do not promote inflammation when eaten as part of a balanced diet. In fact, they contain antioxidants such as lutein and zeaxanthin, which may help counter oxidative stress. Choline itself plays an important role in male health. It supports liver function, cellular repair, and proper nerve signaling. These processes influence bladder control, pelvic muscle coordination, and overall metabolic stability. Many men unknowingly fall short on choline intake after avoiding egg yolks, which can contribute to fatigue, mental fog, and subtle neuromuscular issues. As men age, muscle loss also becomes a hidden factor affecting prostate health. Reduced muscle mass worsens insulin resistance and inflammation, both of which place additional strain on the prostate. Eggs provide high-quality protein that helps preserve lean tissue, indirectly supporting a healthier hormonal and inflammatory environment. The prostate does not respond to single foods in isolation. It reflects the overall state of the body. When circulation is strong, inflammation is controlled, and hormones are balanced, the prostate is far more likely to remain calm and functional. In that context, eggs are not a risk. They are a supportive, nutrient-dense part of a larger health pattern. Now we can finally answer the question that brings most men here. How many eggs can you safely eat per day? The answer, based on modern research, is far more reassuring and far more personal than the fear-based advice many people grew up with. When researchers from Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, and large NIH-backed population studies analyzed long-term egg consumption, a consistent pattern emerged. For most healthy men, eating 1 to 3 eggs per day does not increase the risk of heart disease, hormonal disruption, or prostate problems. In many cases, it actually supports better nutrition, satiety, and metabolic stability. Eggs repeatedly show up as neutral or beneficial when the overall diet is balanced and lifestyle factors are reasonable. Think of eggs not as a standalone risk, but as part of a larger system. Your body responds to patterns, not isolated foods. If your triglycerides are controlled, your HDL is healthy, your blood sugar is stable, and you stay physically active, your body handles eggs very well. For men with good metabolic health, 2 to 3 eggs daily can support protein intake, hormone production, muscle maintenance, and energy levels without creating cardiovascular strain. For men dealing with early insulin resistance or weight gain, eggs can actually be helpful. A protein-rich breakfast that includes eggs often improves blood sugar control and reduces cravings later in the day. In these cases, 1 to 2 eggs per day paired with vegetables, fiber, and healthy fats can be part of a metabolic reset rather than a problem. There is a smaller group of men known as cholesterol hyperresponders. Their LDL rises more noticeably with higher dietary cholesterol intake. Even here, eggs are not automatically off limits. Many of these men do well with 3 to 6 eggs per week while increasing fiber, omega-3 intake, and physical activity to balance lipid patterns. The key is monitoring, not avoidance. Context matters just as much as quantity. Eggs eaten with vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats behave very differently in the body than eggs paired with processed meats, refined carbs, and poor quality oils. The plate matters as much as the food. The most important takeaway is this. You don't need to fear eggs. You need to understand your body. Your lab results, energy levels, digestion, and appetite are feedback signals. When those markers are stable, eggs can be a reliable, nourishing part of your routine. For most men between 35 and 70, 1 to 3 eggs per day is safe and often beneficial. For those with excellent metabolic health and active lifestyles, even slightly higher intake can still fit within the research. For others, moderation and personalization are the answer, not restriction. Good health isn't built on food fear. It's built on informed choices, consistency, and listening to how your body responds. When you replace anxiety with understanding, decisions become simpler, calmer, and far more sustainable.